Welcome to Strictly Creative. My name is Garmami, and we have a filmmaker this time as our guest. His name is Alexander Cruz. How you doing, Alexander?
Doing as good as I could possibly be in this weird, strange time of ours, man. I know we're tired of calling it that, but it still is, and it's going to be like that for a little while longer. So,
It sure is.
Making the best of it, man. Making the best of it.
For sure, bro. And we appreciate your time here. This is it's going to be a fun conversation, speaking to a filmmaker, a visual storyteller. First question I have for you, sir. How did you get involved in visual storytelling? What motivated you?
You know, I've thought about that for a little while, and it's like the more that you get into it, the more of a mystery it really is. Like, you know, I've been drawing since I was a kid. Well, I used to draw a lot more when I was a kid, but you know, I had access to a camera. We had a VHS camera at home, and we were one of the few families that had one. Like, it was a shared camera. And I used to make short films and stuff like that. But, you know, as to why I pursued it, though, and why I say my brother and my sister didn't pursue it, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just an inclination, man. And I'm kind of seeing that just with my brother and his kids, and in talking to friends, and maybe you've seen this too with their kids. You know, the kid comes out and it's a baby, and as it's growing older, it takes on a certain personality, and you don't know where it comes from, man. You know what I'm saying? It's really mysterious in a way. There's a combination of genetics and environment, what's available to you. But I guess I was really lucky, though, at a young age to know that I do like expressing myself in a certain way, and that was one of it. But, you know, throughout high school, I was a painter, and that's what I really wanted to do. And fortunately or unfortunately, but I think more fortunately, I got rejected by the University of Ottawa's Fine Arts program. I had my interview, and the guy just destroyed me. Like, it was not a good feeling. Even though I knew I kind of wanted to do film at some point, I did want to do fine arts. But so I abandoned that, and then I went to school and I did poli-sci, and I just loved studying issues and documentaries and stuff. And I always knew I wanted to do film. I didn't get into Concordia either, so that was a roadblock. Then I got into news, the documentaries, and eventually I just got into scripted stuff. And I've been doing it for God, 15, 16, 17 years. I can't remember really, but for a long time now.
Now, you mentioned that when you were a child, you were making story. You were telling stories. If you don't mind, can you share one of the films you had? Well, what sort of stories were you?
No, like they were like scenes of stuff. Yeah, when I was a little kid, we'd have toys and we'd create movies with them. I'd invite my friends over. We'd shoot a scene from a new James Bond film. We were just dicking around. But from a young age, though, like I was already tape to tape editing and cutting together, you know, scenes from films and the scenes that we shot, juxtaposing things and making it seem like the production value on these things were huge. And it just, I don't know. I think just at a young age, I just loved doing it. I can't explain why. And until this day, like, I think more than anything, I consider myself an editor. And you know, editors, you know, filmmaking is written three times: when it's written as a script, when it's written, when it's shot, and then it's written when it's edited. And that's what I think Francis Ford Coppola had said. But really, if there's one skill that's really going to help you in shooting, it's editing. As a director, like I'm not a diva in that sense. I'm just shooting to edit. I'm just getting what I need to get in post. And in post, like post is kind of like, you know, it's a feeling that I had when I was a kid. It's like, you know, you're in the kitchen and you're looking through the oven there and you're seeing that cake rise. All those elements and those ingredients and all that labor that you put into it, it's becoming something. And I just actually finished a documentary on a friend of mine, a local musician. And I mean, it is like, it actually got me through the winter, which was so depressing, man. And, you know, you're more or less trying to tell your own story in editing, and you're creating certain affect, and it's addictive in that sense. I don't know, like, yeah.
I'm really liking the honesty in your answers and the analogies you're using there, Alexander. Yeah. Now, over the years, what key values and principles are still relevant to you, and how you approach telling a story or working on a project? Well, what are some of your fundamental sort of values that you hold?
Well, you know, like one when it comes to filmmaking, like it's one of the most resource intensive arts out there. It's just, it's just the most, like, I'm very envious of like musicians. They just pick up a guitar and write something with this sort of thing. Maybe you could write a script on your own, but if you want to make anything of scale, you need people. You know what I mean? And if you've looked at maybe some of where our popular culture has gone today, people are always agonizing over not being given the opportunities they think they deserve, or how things aren't as equal as they want. I mean, my sort of raison d'etre has always been just figure it out. You know what I'm saying? No one's going to make your movie for you. Like, how badly do you really want to make this movie? And in some sense, yeah, like it's never been more democratized. Like filmmaking technology, it's more accessible than ever. And you can tell your story, but the process of filmmaking is a gut check. Like, you will realize over time, did I really just want to be at a party with like famous people or artists, or did I really care about telling this story? Because it's the most humbling, one of the most humbling crafts like out there. You have this great idea, and then it's just the cold hard reality of the economics behind it, of what you can tell with what you have. And I've really learned to embrace like working with what I have. Like, I casted in this current film that we're working right now, like a lot of the actors I've worked with before, and I'm getting a lot out of just being able to give people the opportunity to express themselves locally in a story that is based in Old Hull, about Old Hull. And it's just very rare, because usually like this place is it's a sit-in for like some American city in a movie of the week. But so just like collaborating with other people now, it's become more like I almost get as much out of that as I do, like whatever I've done on my own, to get this thing off the ground. So
now I am curious to hear about your film, but before we dive into that, I just give us, what is your creative process in general? How do you work? How do you operate? How do you come up with an idea and execute it?
Like it's really, I think generally like maybe an easy answer is that I usually make movies about stuff that I'm obsessed with. You know what I'm saying? And in a way, like every film is a dialogue with myself, trying to work my way through certain problems. Like the movies that I make don't always reflect that, because, the economics of what I can do, sometimes it may tend to be more like, maybe more commercial, say, like maybe more mass audience oriented, or maybe more art house oriented. But generally, like, I think if you want to be a filmmaker, you got to learn how to take notes. And I think that is something that I love to do. It's just, I think I was just born with a hyper analytic mind, always sort of observing people and situations, and always taking notes, insights. I don't know what.
Right. When you say taking notes, you literally mean taking notes?
Like, taking notes.
Okay. Wow.
Taking notes. Yeah. But it depends on the product though, because, like I've got like, I don't know, a million sort of scripts that I'm working on, and based on different things, maybe like a coming of age film about growing up versus, a film about the art industry, or, like, for example, I think I mentioned earlier, like I worked on a documentary that I just finished, and I had that footage on there was like over 30 hours of footage. I had it on my hard drive for like 5 years. Like I didn't do anything with it. And it wasn't until I hit, like a really a bad funk, like this last December, like depression in December and in January. And it was one that is probably the worst winter of my life. I don't know about you, but it was.
Well, I think for most, because of, the reality we're all living with COVID-19 and so on, of course, but continue.
Yeah. And so like, I think I was in a bad space mentally, but, depression can sometimes be really inspiring. And one thing maybe not inspiring, but it can be a teacher, I should say. Like, one thing that crossed my mind is, what if I can't do this anymore? Wow. Making films, what I mean? Because I identified so much of who I was with becoming this thing. And, just certain, I was in a really bad mood or a really bad depression, and it just crossed my mind, and it was just a thought experiment, and it felt really real. And so I went back into the footage, and this is what my friend was expressing. The documentary is about my friend, a musician, just about him chasing his dreams at a young age, and then trying to be this musician, and then realizing, what he was really in love with is just the process of writing and playing music for the rest of his life. And then that, which I would have overlooked in previous years, all of a sudden spoke to me. And so within a month, about 6 weeks, I finished a rough cut, having gone through 30 hours of footage. Like, it just made sense all of a sudden. So sometimes we're just looking for things to click like that, right? Because, like, it doesn't matter, like, if we didn't write the film or we're not the subject in the film, the filmmaker is really telling his own story, and it just took me a while for me to sort of accept that that's where I was. That's not to say that, like, I've given up being a filmmaker. I'm still doing it, and I'll probably continue to do it for as long as I can. It's just age, like I'm there with you, man. I'm like mid-30s, yeah. So yeah, it's really like I think, like I mentioned earlier, it's a dialogue with myself. It's where I am at any given point in my life, and that's what the movie ends up being about.
In that dialogue, and if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to December, because it's in that dialogue with oneself, as far as the need to create and be, just the need to tell a story, to create and to share that dialogue with oneself. How much is being creative? How much is that therapeutic for people and for you? Like, in other words, the process of creating, be it a film, writing a story, a script, and so on. What does that do for you emotionally, in terms of when you feel like you're feeling down? I think most Canadian, most people get depressed around seasonal depression or whatever they call it. Don't quote me on that. The guy on the video, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
I feel you. Yeah.
Around that time of the year, people's motivation might be a little down, and of course, being creative is it therapeutic for you?
Well, absolutely. I mean, like, this is a very maybe boring or technical answer, but I think it actually speaks a lot to how our minds work. I mean, I was reading some David Allen, and he's a productivity guru. And in a nutshell, what he's saying is our minds are whiteboards. They're not meant to hold all these things in it at once. Like, I think science says you can hold like 7 things in your mind at once. When you have too many things in there, you just get depressed. You know what I mean? You're trying to draw associations. You're trying to problem solve. It's just, you're overwhelmed. There's not enough bandwidth in that.
Right.
So one thing that he does with his clients is he brings them in, and they could be a CEO of like Bell or something, and he sits them down, and he has a big stack of paper, and he's like, "What's on your mind now?" And he just writes them out, one sheet after another, like whatever's on their mind. So it could take a couple hours until their mind is completely empty. And at that point, it's like, I have nothing left on my mind. And then he'll go through the 100 things and come up with some actionable, something, some game plan for addressing whatever the task is, whatever's on his mind and stuff like that. And in a way, that's what art is. You know what I mean? Like, when I was going through that funk, there was just a lot of self-doubt and a lot of paranoia, I think, about where all this was going. And that process allowed me to get it out, to express it in a way. So it's definitely therapeutic. But I mean, like, a word about depression is like, I think one thing I did learn is, like, it's very easy. Like, I'm a really routine oriented person. It's really easy to get shit done and to exercise and to be funny and all that shit when you're feeling good. When you hit the depression, you hit a certain lethargia and you just don't want to do anything. And I think we need to kind of reframe, what is a good day? You know what I'm saying? Because I think if we tend to have like A type or productive types, we tend to have this all or nothing mentality, and that actually buries you when you're not feeling so good. because you just, you don't want to do anything. Or if you don't accomplish your goals, you feel like ass. But the thing is, if you were not feeling so good and you managed to do 10 push-ups that day, you sent out 2 emails, you know what I'm saying? You got to reframe that, understand that that was a good day. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That was a good fucking day. As opposed to what it's some other day where you write 5 pages of your script, you finish the rough draft, you're worked out, like you're max set, you're going out to have beers afterwards. Like generally when we do finish something, that's because of a million baby steps that came before it, and we just sort of put the seal on there, and it's like you're done. But I think it's in those moments when you're zapped of energy that you really is your opportunity to really test yourself, to really see what you're made of in a way. And you may not have any piss and vinegar, and it's good to just kind of acknowledge that and to know that, and to just appreciate what you can do in any given moment. I think that's the good mindset to pull yourself out of that funk.
Yeah, I know it sounds like it's a good way to kind of instill that day-to-day balance, and to check in on yourself, right? Every day, and just find that peace of mind and that balance. And I think all creative people can relate to those struggles of being somewhat performing at a high level one day, and then maybe not feeling so productive on the other. And I have so many questions to ask you on just that topic alone.
Yeah. Shoot, man.
And like, before I get it, I'll ask you this question, and then I'll ask you about your project, because I'm really curious to hear about what you're currently working on, this film that's set in Hull, Quebec, Canada. Now, do you think creative people are maybe assessing productivity as the standard of success, when is productivity success in the creative milieu? Like, is it something, like, the reason why I ask is because one could spend their entire lifetime working on one film, and releasing this film, and let's say nobody watches it and nobody cares, or the whole world watches it and it becomes a big hit. Or you could have someone who releases a film every 6 months, and garners momentum at a small niche, sort of has a small following. Like, is productivity, is being hyper productive, or being very just being productive, is that successful for a creative person? It's particularly for
well, I guess that question should be directed at me, because I simply don't know, but other people, how other people define success. But for me, like, when I was younger, I like to think I could have gone to LA and hacked my way on sets and stuff like that, but that was never what I wanted. You know what I'm saying? Like, I figured maybe eventually I'll end up there. I moved to Toronto for a bit, and I've worked on sets before, and I was like, sets are great and all, but it's a grind. It's a lifestyle. I only want to work on sets that are, my films. I only want to work on my stuff. So I think honing my voice and discovering myself was really more of my interest. Wow. How do I define success? Like, it's weird, right? Like, my last movie, Pur Laine, which was a film I shot in Ottawa and in Gatineau. Shout out to the Canada Council for giving me some money for that. Like, we headlined the film festival, the Ottawa Canadian Film Festival, and that was like my first kind of big, moderately big sort of gig. I used to work for a film festival, just like on a side note, and I realized, it ain't a joke, man. Like if you make a small film, a short film, you could sandwich that in between a bunch of other short films, and those are the most popular programs because everyone goes to see these films. People who made them, people who are in them, people relatives. So those are sold out. If you're talking about a feature, you're standing on your own. Like you are people, like if you're programming these films, people gotta want to buy to see them. You know what I'm saying? To buy a ticket to see them, you got to put butts in seats, and you know, it's always been a rude awakening for me. Like even on that film, you know, they was damn near like sold out at the thing, and that was kind of nice. And it wasn't the greatest film, like it was okay for me, you know, and I learned a lot about it, about myself and filmmaking. But you know, my mom was there, my dad was there, and like actually a lot of it was based on like my personal life, and you know, like that was nice, like, you know, because they finally got to see, as you can imagine. I mean, with some immigrant parents, they don't really know, like, what are you doing, Carmami? You know what I mean? Like, what do you do? Like, why do you go and do these things? You know, and then finally they get to see the sort of fruits of, because a lot of my other stuff was small and it'd be international and no one could go and see it. That was cool. So was that success? Like that was a form of success for sure. But you know, at the end of the day, it's just like goals are great, but you can't attach your happiness to the outcome. I really think that one thing that I have learned, like just in the past little while too, a certain shift in me is like striving and pursuing goals actually becomes more interesting when you don't attach it, the outcome, to your happiness. You know, you're happy coming into it.
Mhm.
You know, and I think to get to that happy place though, you have to take yourself a lot less seriously. You know what I'm saying? That if your happiness is conditional on that outcome, that goal, I mean, there's like that is just a recipe for anxiety and, you know, and control, having issues with control.
Right.
You know, you'll see the people you work with less as collaborators and more as people that are a part of your grand scheme of things. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're this thing, and
Right.
you know, like I don't really. It's not sustainable for
This
somebody
is
like me. Like,
this is I don't mean to interrupt there, but this
yeah,
is
go ahead.
interesting because like are you would it be fair to say that you're intrinsically motivated? You're motivated to from what you've said, it sounds like you're motivated to tell a story and you don't attach yourself to the end product, the
Yeah,
deliverable in the film. You're more focused on the process and
yeah,
and that means something to you, but you're not. And I guess success is, and much like happiness, that's an inside job, right? It's not
yeah.
something where we
Mhm.
attach to like, oh, it won an award or this, that, and the other. As a creative person, is this something that you? I guess you kind of answered it already, but is this something that you kind of found out through a few projects, or did
Yeah.
you
Oh,
always? Okay.
absolutely. Like I wasn't born thinking like this. Like I think younger folks could have access to some really good, you know, Instagram quotes, and they may be able to say this, but it takes failing like a motherfucker, man.
Yeah.
I failed so much. Like I think my first feature, which was nothing to write home about, it was a disaster. But out of like 100 festival submissions, it got into two. You know what I'm saying? And they were just like really small festivals. And you know, it was just at the beginning, the heartbreak was real. Like every time I got rejected, it was just nasty, you know. But you know, like it's just a part of it. Like I think, especially if you come from, say, an immigrant household where there's this uh risk averse mentality, do not do things that doesn't bring in money, that is going to take up a lot of time, become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. Yeah, I was pretty lucky. My parents were not that hard on me, but they still had a residue of that sort of value system. um and I think it's kind of good to an extent, because you do want results,
Mhm.
right? And if you're serious about results, you got to be honest about where you are in life and how good you are. Like I'm not as, and you know, here's the thing you learn about filmmakers. It's just so weird. It's like they think just by virtue of wanting to express themselves, they're good at what they do. No, they're not. You know what I'm saying? And like it's like somebody who thinks like they're a good singer just because they want to sing.
Right.
You gotta learn this shit. You gotta, you know, you gotta learn like storytelling models and the structures, 3 act structures. You gotta read scripts and break them down so you could write a script. And I think that's something I kind of learned even later on in life, like, you know, in my 30s, like even just recently, I've taken writing more seriously. Yeah, I think, I don't know what was the question.
isn't this a process continuous though? Like, isn't it fair to say like that this process of learning and refining one's trade and art, like that's a continuous.
Absolutely. And failure is progress. Like you have to fail. And I've just seen so many artists, filmmakers and such, and it's just they either failed or they weren't treated right by somebody they worked with, and they just collapse. And I understand, like I've been on sets where, you know, I've just killed myself to find the money to pay people, and I've been like, you know, just walked on by ungrateful people. And you know, and those situations happen. I think we've talked about this actually at some point earlier, and it happens. But it's just like in those moments, you gotta look at yourself. Like I think I tend to think of myself as an old man. Like if I was like 65 or whatever, 70, and then some kid comes up to me and says, "I used to be a filmmaker," and I'm like, "Yeah," and they say, "Well, why'd you quit?" And if my answer was if I were going to be honest with myself, my answer was because that person mouthed off at me. It wouldn't feel good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't feel good. And the truth is when a lot of people say why they quit, they'll tend to sort of exaggerate how bad the situation was just to kind of justify having made the decision to quit.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it just may very well be, you know, like if I lose the love for this or it's just not me anymore, it's like that'll be it, and it'll be okay. I'll walk away from it, you know. But otherwise, I think one of the things that really keeps me going, and it's just a weird thing. It's just like this is a little voice in my head or a feeling that says, "Why not do it? Just why not do it? Like, what else are you doing? You know, I'm not married, no have any kids. Like, why not just fucking do it?" You know?
And I mean, like the telling of the story is I think in any art form, I'm just going to like I think just getting it done is probably the hardest part of it. You know, if it's publishing your writing, your poetry, you know, if it's getting your film done, if it's, you know, attending that recital, I think just getting it done is very challenging for creatives, because a lot tends to be at risk. And as you mentioned, the fear of failure for a lot averts them from even trying. You know, a lot of people give up on their creativity, be it the development of their art, the skill sets involved in their art, or trying to take a different approach. You know, I guess it's different. It's a case by case sort of different for different people. But now, Alexander, tell us about this film you're currently working on. I'm really curious to hear about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I had a lot of ideas, and it's just they somehow they work themselves out in this story about a cleaning lady who's a drug addict who you know, for whatever reason got her sister involved in drugs. Her sister goes missing, turns up dead, and then this cleaning lady makes it her mission to find whoever killed her.
Wow.
So, you know, I think when you're making a film, you've got to think of things from like so many different facets. Like it's not just say writing a novel and you let your imagination go. You have to be really practical in filmmaking. So I knew I wanted to film something in my hood of Hull. You know what I'm saying? You know,
which is a legendary neighborhood. If anyone's
this building is so old, it's like falling apart.
It's awesome though. But as a storyteller, I'm sure for you, you know, each time you look around, you could see a scene. But please, to tell us more about this film.
Yeah, well, like just to kind of give you a sense of like the mentality, I think you kind of have to have. It's like there's a joke about the producer who walks into a writer's room and then he drops a bunch of shit on the table, random shit, and he says, "This is what I can get for free. What's the movie about?"
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And so like the writer, I'm looking at my hood. This is what I can get for free.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And my hood is sick. Like, I mean, it's been used in what was it, like not too long ago, it was in On the Road, that Hollywood film. It doubled as like a 1950s American town. It's been in I don't know how many, but it's just I want the seedy side of this city. You know what I'm saying? And there's what else is free? There's a drug problem here, man.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, there's a lot of junkies around here. It's known as being a shady hood. So a lot of the characters that I came
It's
up with,
got personality though.
oh yeah, a
I
lot of
mean,
texture, you
it's got
know.
personality and an interesting energy. But yeah, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, it's just super diverse as well. And so basically the characters that I came up with, I didn't really come up with. They're in town. Like this is,
Yeah.
like the cleaning lady, there's this Filipino who also works for the cleaning company. So the story's based around kind of this cleaning company and the drama that goes down there, and there's a lot of side stories, and basically she's trying to find out who's killed her sister. I can't really say too much about it, but that's where it's at. And I think it was maybe after the first draft, I talked to my production manager, and she said, you know what, if you're going to convince some of these juries to give you money, Canada Council, actually, we were successful with them, thankfully. So we have some funding for this. She told me you should make it COVID friendly. And so because this was last year, right? And I'm like, oh shit, since I was working at home, I was just pounding out the script while doing the video editing and shit for my other job. And so I figured, you know what? Yeah, let's just write it into the script. And it became a crucial part of the story, which is that this cleaning company is going down under because government offices are empty and no one needs their services. So not only is she, trying to find her sister's killer, everyone's losing their job and everyone's it's a dog eat dog at this company, right? Mm-hmm. So I wrote that in there, and I think that's kind of the approach when you're making an indie film, which is you're trying to create a perfect storm of everything, making this thing as timely and as unique and as important as possible in this moment. So a lot of the actors I work with on Pur Laine, you know what I mean? I brought back a lot of the same people. I want everybody local. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just like, I want to develop the talent here, but it's also cheaper. It's also just more convenient for me. And yeah, the stories, it's across different genres. It's got some comedy and thriller in there, and it's going to be a real bitch to make, man, because it is beyond anything I've done before, production value wise. But like a word about the process, like I think it's taken this pandemic for me to accept that I really like how crazy it drives me making movies. They say you should do something that makes you afraid, something that you're scared to do every day, one thing. And right. I love that. I love how I have this deadline. It's like, oh man, I need to find this venue. And so I'm just driving around and then I see this venue and I walk in, I don't know anybody, and I'm forced to talk to the owner and ask him, would you be open for us to film here? You speak Joao French, probably doesn't even understand me, but it's like, I'm forced to do it. And and I think that's the kind of growth I need that I don't really get from the Joe job, even though that is also interesting,
Hey, this is really fascinating. Are you documenting this process in terms of the story behind the story of the script you're writing and this film you're producing? Are you doing kind of like, are you journaling? Do you have a diary? Because you're really challenging yourself, right? With this, do one thing every day that scares you. I believe that's from a song about sunscreen from, is that the song? Yeah. Everyone.
I don't even remember who said it. I just kind of remember.
I think it's Buzz Luhrmann, the song from
Buzz Luhrmann. Oh my God. Yeah.
1999. Where were you? Anyway, do one thing every day that scares you.
Fuck. Maybe that's where he got it from. Brainwash. I remember that.
Awesome. What I'm saying is, are you documenting? Because for me, as I'm hearing you talk about this, I'm like, man, there's so much content behind the content. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I've kept a journal of, since I was 24.
Okay.
And I do have a bit of a quota. I try to do like at least 4 pages a week. You know what I mean? Keep up with that. But yeah, there's also like BTS that'll eventually happen at some point, like behind the scenes, where I can kind of describe the process more thoroughly and visually as well. But yeah, of course, I document everything, man, as much as I can, mainly in the journal. But as well, when it comes to submitting grants, like, I don't know, like I think the Canada Council grant was like 300 pages. It was just so long, man. including the scripts in there. Like it was just so much work, and I did calc as well for Quebec provincial arts there, and within that you have to write your treatment. You have to how did you come up with these ideas? Who are you hiring and why? And so the good thing about grants, I mean, I don't want to be on government publicly funded arts funding for forever, man. Like I'd love to at some point, we'll see where this one goes, and move up to maybe streaming services and start pitching to them and stuff. But the good thing about the grants is that it does make you get your shit together, man. You know what I mean? And I always encourage my friends. I send them templates for doing stuff. And a lot of people, it's just not their thing. I've been on grants juries as well, which is also very helpful to see how people deliberate behind the scenes.
Right.
Everything from, like the sort of trends that come out in film ideas to the ideologies behind them. It's really interesting when you're on juries and you have artists that would be on virtually every protest you can imagine, but then behind the scenes, they'll read something that, somebody who references their identity and they just throw it out because the movie sucks. You know what I mean? Like the cash value of some of these ideas when it comes to deliberating with which ideas deserve money and stuff like that. So that's really important. You know what I mean? And yeah, man, I can't even remember what the question was. I just went on like.
Well, it's interesting, Alexander, because that administrative side of the creative workflow, people generally detest.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you mentioned 300 word or 300 page document to fill out. Like that alone almost gave me a heart attack and a stroke. You know what I'm saying? Like 300 pages. Holy man. But it is what it is. It's as you mentioned, you got to do the work, and there's that administrative aspect that pertains to the financing. That's extremely crucial to your line of work as a creative person.
Yeah.
Question that I have for you is, how do you motivate your crew? You've worked with this crew and the talent to perform at their best. What's your approach? I think I've witnessed your work. I've witnessed you direct before.
Right.
But
tell
me about your style of leadership in terms of how you direct and lead a team.
Yeah, but just a word about like what you're saying about the giving you a heart attack. I mean, like it's not like I'm this like machine that just doesn't stop. Like the thing is, after I finished Pur Laine and that did a festival circuit for like a year, I took a year off. I was burned out for a year.
Wow.
I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do any other creative work, and I had serious doubts of whether or not I want to continue with this because the thing didn't turn out the way I wanted to, right? But then the inclination just comes back. The minute I'm not burned out, I want to do it again. But as for like directing like people and hiring people, like I haven't hired my crew yet. Like I have a couple main people on right now that I've worked with that are just solid professionals. Like the thing is when it comes to like casting and crew, like when it comes to directing like actors, like 90% of the job is casting. Like smart directors hire people they have to direct the least. They're just already there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to the craftsmen, it's like I want to hire people that know what they're doing. Like I'm going to be the weak link there. You know what I'm saying? Like I'll have certain expectations, a certain schedule that I've got to meet, that and we'll have to, like, that's really the ass to the fire. But otherwise it's like like I need them, and I try to stay out of their way. I try to make it easier on people. And often it's not being an ego or anything like that on set. It's just really, one thing you realize is like, if you're really, really nice, but you're like a sloppy director, some people will want to work with you again. You can be like Hitler, but if you stay on schedule and people get paid and people get off and get their breaks, they'll want to work for you again. Like, I'm not saying you should be Hitler, but when people go to work, they want to get the shit done and go home afterwards. You know what I mean? Like they want to have some time to themselves at home. And I'm the same way too. Like, I don't want to work 16 hours, man. Like I've worked like on sets that were 24-hour days. like just like falling asleep and exploitation beyond anything, and so like all that comes down to like how ambitious is your idea, and what can you get feasibly done, and how much are you paying people, and you're constantly having to weigh these things, right? Because if you're not paying people enough, they'll bail the minute before the production, and you're fucked. So you got to pay them enough money that it's worth their while, Yeah.
What are some of the most, from your experience, what would you say are some of the most misunderstood aspects of filmmaking and visual storytelling for the non-initiated, for people who don't know, who've never, worked on a video project or a film or whatever? What would you tell them is the most misunderstood aspect of the business?
Well, I think we alluded to it earlier, like a good, maybe like if it takes 3 years to make a film, maybe a good like 90% of it is administrative. You know what I'm saying? Like everyone, people love the idea of being a director, like wearing a scarf in the middle of summer and having a loudmouth and yelling at people and just looking like a badass, some sort of a Frenchy badass. And that's cool too. But honestly, like I'm so tired when I'm on a set. I'm wearing like a shitty t-shirt and some beat up jeans. And I'm just like looking at the skit and just pumping it out. Maybe one day when I could hire more assistants, I'll wear that scarf in the middle of summer, that fouloise, whatever it's called, the French thing. But it's like otherwise, like during Pur Laine, like I was just so tired, man. Like, I mean, I'd just be laying on my bed and I'd be like, because you can't afford to hire more people, no one's going to do that budget. You know what I'm saying? No one's going to do your bookkeeping in a certain moment. And it's like, I did have a bookkeeper, but I had to do some stuff afterwards. And it's like, if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. It's just the math is there. You know what I'm saying? It's not just the coming up with the great ideas. And what one thing I've learned though is I think you learn to respect yourself more, and people do respect you more generally. It's almost like being a producer who has had no technical experience telling people to do things, versus being from that background, being a technical producer, carrying the gear around up the hill, being on those hot days, shooting in the rain. People are more apt to take advice, to take direction from that person because they've been there. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes you could just see through people in a way, and that kind of feeds your instinct, to know who to work with and who not to work with, who's real, who's not.
It's interesting because I've as I mentioned before, I've seen you in action directing before, and we don't have to talk about that project or whatever. It was something on the commercial side, I suppose. But the point is, I see, and you were it seemed you were very, very relaxed. You were calm. You know what I mean? Very chill. You were telling people what to do. And it seemed, at least from my perspective, like you were enjoying the process, but you were not stressed. You were not annoyed. You knew what you were doing, and the people around you were collaborative and following that direction. Can you tell us a funny story in regards to the dynamic of working on projects, and how sometimes things can go sideways? I don't know if that's ever happened to you.
Yeah. Oh man. Like, well, I mean, I worked for probably one of the more successful directors out of the Philippines. He'll remain nameless. I wouldn't work with the guy again, but he had this idea of maybe doing the Inland Empire sort of process of filmmaking, which is like David Lynch made a movie, or he made it up as he went along. And this guy thought, I'm going to do that. And he had a writer at his hip, and it's just the blind leading the blind, man. You know what I mean? Like, it was just such a bad fucking experience. I was never that big on the guy's storytelling instincts to begin with. And that just kind of exposed a lot to me, like in that moment. And in a way, it was very it was a good experience though, because you've really got to respect and value you're casting your crew's time. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, across the board, unless you're got a big budget or whatever, and they're all unionized, like no one's really getting paid that much money to do this. And you know, especially out there, like that was one of the huge, I should say, yeah, I've worked and lived in the Philippines for a little while and worked on films out there. The classism and the exploitation was just like something that you know, I think scarred me. Yeah, it was just so bad. And you know, like when you got people coming out, and I think maybe what you saw was that like you know, a director who shoots to edit, so a director who knows what shots he needs to tell the story, and that's exactly what I was doing. It was just I knew I had a little shot list, and I knew I needed, you know, A to Z to tell the story, and you know, it was really nothing fancy. I just was trying to bang out what I needed, and that's actually more of what I do. Well, that is how I work, I should say, on like scripted projects, like outside of work and stuff like that. At this level, though, there's a lot more maybe hand holding before the shoot, so there's a lot of rehearsals and stuff like that. And you know, I think in those moments, that's when the director comes out. Like in Pur Laine, like I cast Celestine Caravaggio, and she hadn't really had much acting experience, and it was just because the lead actress I had was in the United States, and it was very hard to bring her over. I literally had to cast this woman really early, and in the process, like some people would have called it brutal, but like it was just very like frank and honest about, you know, what the expectations were and what she could do, and trying to grow her range and stuff like that. And you know, while the movie in the end wasn't, you know, this, you know, fucking incredible film, I mean, she won Best Actress at least one film festival, and she's actually she's been really successful like ever since. She's been on a bunch of commercials and a bunch of TV shows, and that actually made me feel really good. You know, like I played a part in her development and success. You know, so yeah, like before the actual filming, like it's pretty clear. Like it only maybe it'll take me maybe 2 or 3 sessions with the main actors to kind of figure out what the range is, what the tone is of the film, and then everybody else I'll maybe have one session with. And then so when we're there, it's just banging it out, man. You know what I'm saying? Just ticking those shots off, like every scene off, and it's not about fucking around, you know. Like at some point, yeah, it'll be great. Like Spielberg was like, you know, I don't rehearse with Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep's on the post the movie. I don't like to rehearse because, you know, sometimes it would have been a great take, so I'll just sort of shoot it. Well, that's great if you're working with them. Like, what the fuck, man? I could give them any script and they'll make it good. But when you're working with amateurs,
right,
you know what I mean, and people who don't have much experience, you gotta make sure that they know, you know, what they're getting into.
For sure. Now, what's the most interesting and unique experience you've ever witnessed in your line of work?
You know, like I've had a lot of cool experiences. Like I remember in the Philippines, I filmed in this occult village, and that was really odd. It was interesting. I filmed a live birth. Like for this film, they needed a cutaway because the lead actress was pregnant in the thing, and then but they wanted an actual baby coming out. So I was like kind of on standby at the studio, but thankfully, like the Philippines is overpopulated, so babies are always been popping up. So they throw me in the van, ladies waiting, holding in the baby, and I filmed that, and I was like, oh my god, I had like a 50 mil prime, and I was right there. So it was at Venice actually, that film, and apparently did pretty good. I saw it like once a long time ago. It was pretty good. Stuff like that. I mean, you know, doing short documentaries is often really cool. Like, you know, I was a friend of mine invited me out to a fiesta in the Philippines, and we're hanging out in Manila, and this gang rumble broke out, and I was filming all of it, and it was crazy. It ended up being this experimental short that kind of went all over the place. I had legs. You know, one day I woke up, it was my birthday, I read the paper, and there was this guy who was this old guy who was blind his whole life. He fell down the stairs, and then he went to the hospital. They fixed his face and told him, you're not really blind, actually. You just have bad cataracts. So it took him out for the 68, he could see for the first time. So I did a documentary on him. Like the possibilities are endless. Like I think people are like, there's so many interesting stories out there.
Right.
If this thing never worked out, if I tanked, I would always be looking for small stories to tell like that,
So is it fair to say you prefer the short storytelling or short documentaries over fictional feature films?
Like short docs are fun because they're cheap and they're doable, and there's no restrictions, there's no limitations to what you can do. I mean, especially in posts and stuff, you can tell however the hell you want to. When you're looking at these big, massive like projects, these feature films, like it's a whole nother kind of commitment and a whole nother skill set almost. If anything, you are not free to create in that situation. It's like you have your story and you've got to tell that story, and you have to tell it as economically efficiently as possible. So I mean, I enjoy all of it. It's usually when I'm burned out after a huge project, I'll maybe do something small, you know what I mean, just to kind of keep things going. And I think that's really important too, not to totally stop your practice, whatever it is, like I've done little things like street photography as well, and some drawing and stuff like that. So
you still paint?
I haven't painted in a long time, but I'm really I started drawing again, and I could see myself getting back into painting at some point. Like I think that is liberating compared to filmmaking.
Is there any transferability of skills from painting, drawing to visual storytelling? Is there any classes over?
Well, I think definitely when it comes to composition, photography, obviously that's obvious, you know what I mean? Like it translates, but I think if there's any relation, it's just a certain appreciation for expression, and that's it.
Do you have a community of fellow filmmakers that you can rely on for feedback, support, and all that sort of stuff, or do you roll solo as a creative person?
I do know, like, for example, when I've got a synopsis written out, like I figured out the where this story is going, like the basic DNA of the story, I will send that to various people who I think will give me some good feedback, something important that I could use. And really what you're looking for is for them to rip it apart. You know what I mean? Like you want them to point out where where it doesn't make sense, or where it could be strengthened, and where it's weak, because this ain't like writing a book. I could write a book afterwards and fine, but when you're looking at a film, it's like you're spending a lot of money, and you're it's so much more physically taxing. The stakes are so much higher to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it all starts, a script. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Now, Alexander, I know earlier on you kind of alluded to this, but I'm going to ask you: have you ever considered like quitting visual storytelling and filmmaking? Has that thought crossed your mind? If so, like tell us that story as to as a creative person in this practice that you invested X amount of years in. Like, have you thought of just saying, okay, I've had enough of this, I'm moving on? Has that ever happened to you?
Like I've been on hiatus from it, and I've been burned out from it, and yeah, I have considered stopping it, but even in those moments, you know what I mean, it's like I know it's only a matter of time where this thing comes back. And you know what, like if I had a kid or something like that right now, I don't know, knock somebody up and I had to like settle down and really focus on bringing in that paycheck, the priorities would change, no doubt. But I think that why not is always there. It's like it's what I don't know, it's my raison d'etre, it's my thing, dude. Like just telling stories, and I can't explain why, you know what I mean? um
What would you be doing if you weren't telling stories?
that is a
What,
great that is a great question, and I think that was maybe the crux of my crises, like December, January. What would I do? And um I, there are certain things, like for example, I used to play guitar and then I stopped. Maybe around 19, I just wasn't going the way I wanted to, and I never regretted stopping. I'd like to pick it up every now and then, like get back into it, great. But when you fall out of love with something, leaving it is not a hard thing. If it's hard, the chances are you're either leaving it against your will, or you don't want to leave it. So um yeah, I have no idea, man. Like I think I've gone through a process of like sort of learning to kind of let go from the identity of being a filmmaker, and just letting it be what it is, which is something that I enjoy doing. And I don't know really what the result of that is going to be. I can see a shift in me right now. I'm not as anxious at this point in filmmaking, and maybe it's because the ego's gotten out of the way, and it's just enjoying the process. What would I do? I don't know, man. Like I have no idea. Like I've got my day job, of course. Like maybe I would do something boring within the state, you know.
right,
But
right.
it's like, who knows, man. I've always considered, like, if I had money, like I would love to do a lot of things, like open up a food truck, a little cafe or something like that, like provide food, feed people. I think that's kind of cool. I have no idea, honestly.
What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Um,
It could
well,
be film related or it can be life, whichever one or both.
yeah, well, I guess, I mean, like I learned from a woman even more so than a man, that you have to make do with what you have, like make the best with what you have. And I think that is applicable to everything, you know, and be grateful for what you have. Um, some of the worst advice I've ever heard is actually, I hear this all the time. People say it, and I think they just say it because it rhymes. Like fake it till you make it. I hate that shit. It
Wow.
makes no sense. Like we should encourage people to be fake. You know what I'm saying? Have skills, learn. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is, like, we've all worked for these fucking dinosaurs. You know what I mean? Who had learned, I don't know, three things in 1962, and they just refuse to adapt and to the current scene. You know what I mean? To how comms are today, or visual storytelling. Those people, have made it and continue to fake it. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not there, and there's just so much ego in a lot of them, and I don't want to be one of those people. What inspires me is when these older folks are just like they're so nutty about this, and there's a new technology or something, or and they know the kids know it, so they want to learn from the kids. Like those people are constantly growing. You know what I mean? Um, and those are the best people to work with. You know.
Continuous growth and investment in self and learning is definitely a win-win. And I think you mentioned, in terms of the best advice, essentially it boils down to like being resilient and having gratitude for your experience and
Yeah.
what you have to offer. But I also wanted to know, like, as a filmmaker, is there a particular director that you look up to, or do you have a particular film that really kind of, I guess, what's your favorite film, and who's your favorite director?
Yeah. Well, I guess those are probably both the same question, because I don't really look at you know like my favorite director would naturally have to be the person who directed my favorite film.
Right.
Otherwise, it just wouldn't make any sense. I mean, like, best director is probably the most overrated award you could win, because it means that you're directing it shine brighter than the actual work. And if anything, you want everything to just be of its own thing. Like a film should be a film. And like if the directing pulls you out of the experience, then it's not a good thing. But I mean, like I love, and maybe he's like the antithesis of what I am. It's so interesting. You need an opposite, and it's Tarkovsky. Tarkovsky directed Stalker, and that's my favorite film of all time.
Wow.
And he was just he knew, he had a very particular vision of who he was at a young age. He was like 27 when he died of his childhood, and he knew who he was. And the thing is, like, he did not care for the mass audience. He didn't care about commercialism. I do. You know what I'm saying? I do believe film was made for a mass audience, but I mean, his work is, I can't remember who said it, but it's the films that put you to sleep in the theater that actually keep you up at night. You know what I'm saying? And the boring films, I actually like boring films. And Stalker, I think, took me like 2 or 3 sittings to get through the first time I thought, but I've seen it several times since, and it's just the most brilliant fucking film I've ever seen in my life. It's why we make films. He died at a young age, though. Like he was like 45, I think it was. Like he was anally retentant on set. Like he was so, like there's a field there and he wants to film the field, and then there were flowers there, so he gets his crew out. He's like, I don't want the flowers there in the field. So they go out and they pick out the flowers, and they're like, are we ready to shoot? And he's like, no, we're not ready to shoot. He's like, why? And he's like, because it looks like you picked the flowers. Right. Like he shot Stalker twice. You know what I mean? And that is kind of my worst nightmare as far as like working for a director, somebody who's so OC, who's crazy. Like I think I am, so I do have some OC, but I'm not like that. You know what I'm saying? Someone who's so unwilling to adapt to what is. But I mean, his work speaks for itself. You know what I'm saying? I guess maybe there's a bit of a, I don't know, like I'm speaking through my experience, because the thing is, I'm kind of glad I didn't have success at a young age. And I'm realizing that more and more now, how much it fucks you up. And if I have success later on, great. Who knows if it'll happen, but like big success. He died when he was 45, and in his later years, he was already a parody of himself. So there's something happens when you have success. People all of a sudden assign certain characteristics and attributes to who you are. And then there's this feedback loop where you read that and maybe you get addicted to the validation and you realize, you know what, that's who I am. And then you're Tarkovsky making our Tarkovsky film. Right. And so you're a parody. And his later films are like, this is so, it's almost like a mockery of his work, right? Mm-hmm. So, and he died young, and maybe that's a part of it, which is just like we tend to, maybe romanticize people who die young, and think their work is better than it was. But I mean, I've always loved him, and I've read his book, and Stalker is easily my favorite film.
Alexander, where can we find you online? Where can we follow up on your projects? I don't know if you're on Twitter, Instagram, and all that.
Yeah, it's so interesting, man. Like I was just about to set up a site, but it's taken me forever to set up a site. I don't have Twitter. I think that's my contribution to the conversation, is just not being on Twitter. I do have an Instagram, Ascals Anonymous. And that I update, I don't know, every now and then. It's just some street photography on there, but I will have to, develop more of an online presence. It's something I've grown to understand over the next little while. And I think it's just the projects themselves that are sort of taking up my time. So that's my Instagram. At some point, I'll have a site, and, I can direct people towards that.
Well, thank you very much for your time. This has been a really interesting conversation, and I want to thank you for giving us a lot of insight into the world of filmmaking from your perspective and point of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. It's great.